IU fans, happy October, I guess. Unless you disagreed with the decision. Indiana got wrecked by Maryland on Saturday. I was there in person to witness the beatdown. And on Sunday, at the crack of football in the NFL at 1:15 p.m., Indiana
Crack of
decided
football.
that Walt Bell could no longer serve as this program's offensive coordinator. The school released an announcement that Rod Carey would take over as the program's offensive coordinator, replacing Bell. Carey, of course, was part of the quality control on this Hoosier staff since the start of the 2022. Took over the offensive line responsibilities during the season, and now he will have play calling responsibilities. We're going to break down what it means, how much exactly should change or will change, what it means for the Hoosiers the rest of the season, and so much more here on episode 309 of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on on Sunday, October 1st, 2023, where I'm your host, Nathan Krishnan. Here with me tonight is my normal co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, days of the week are hard. Play calling is even harder in the Big Ten. Walt Bell just couldn't cut it. IU had the 123rd best yards per play mark in the country at 4.3, the 123rd best point per game mark at 15.8. Doesn't matter how much of a struggle Indiana's program has had in recent decades. This was pretty much the low point. What are your initial reactions to Walt Bell getting dismissed?
I mean, there wasn't a single game that we watched outside the Indiana State game, but who, by the way, Indiana State is terrible. Outside the Indiana State game where I came away from the game impressed at all with anything offensively. Even in the Louisville game in the second half, it was kind of like you had like a bad taste left in your mouth because again, they don't QB sneak it on 4th and 1 at the goal line.
For sure.
Or 4th and goal at the 1-yard line. So I mean, just overall an absolute disaster. And I'm not kidding when I say I'm pretty sure Ask Madden could have been a better play caller than Walt Bell. And it sucks because
we wanted it to work.
We want it. No, of course we wanted it to work. You want Indiana to have a good offensive coordinator because having a good offensive coordinator leads to success and then continued success, right? Like Kalen DeBoer should have left this program in a better place if it hadn't been absolutely thrown into reverse by two really bad offensive coordinators in a row.
Nick Sheridan, and then
Nick Sheridan, and now Walt Bell. Yeah. The offense has gone into the Stone Ages. It's terrible. But good news is he's gone. Bad news is we've just permanently signed Rod Carey to be offensive coordinator for good. This is not just an interim position.
Correct.
He's being hired to be the offensive. So again, you've gone from the only offensive coordinator hire that has worked under Tom Allen was a hire from outside. Every single time it has not worked, they have hired from the inside.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But again, they hire Rod Carey.
Walt Bell was an outside hire, but your point is the one time it worked with Kalen DeBoer, he came in, brought some fresh perspective.
I'm pretty sure. No, I think the reason I'm not considering Walt Bell an outside hire is they had some prior pre-existing relationship.
So you're saying, okay, all right, hey, look.
Yeah. So I like the Walt Bell coaching tree and the Tom Allen coaching tree at some point intersect.
I believe they were together at Florida State, if I'm
something like that. So again, like to me, I don't like that's an outside hire, yes, technically, but like again, you're hiring somebody who's your friend or former colleague, like somebody that you know, and not actually going and getting somebody good. And this leads me to something that blows my mind. I might have mentioned this in the last podcast, or I might have mentioned this in a playback room once or twice at some point in time. I can't remember when I say some of the things that I say, but what blows my mind about coaches that are very one-sided. What I mean by that is like, so Tom Allen, everybody understands, is a defensive head coach, right? He's a defensive coordinator.
Sure.
He's grown up running
Yep.
defenses, right? He's just a defensive-minded head coach. He doesn't touch the offense, right? He leaves it to somebody else that understands. That being said, you would think the defensive head coaches would be good at hiring offensive coordinators, and vice versa. You'd think that an offensive head coach would be good at hiring a defensive coordinator because they have to game plan
That's the
against the
strategy
defense.
side, yeah.
Yeah, like from a strategical perspective, if you look at an offense and you're like, wow, that offense is hard to game plan against. I want that guy who works for that offense to call plays for my team, so my team is also hard to game plan against. When you looked at UMass's tape when you hired Walt Bell, there wasn't a single thing about UMass's offense that would have tickled anybody's imagination at all. Positively, I mean, negatively, absolutely, but positively, there was nothing positive about the UMass offense at all. They won 2 games in like what 3-4 seasons that he was there,
something like that. Yeah.
Like it was despicable. It was disgusting. It was abhorrent. And so we knew that hire wasn't going to work from day one. And again, I have that same feeling about Rod Carey, which leads me to the whole discussion about, yay, Walt Bell's been fired. He is just the fall guy. Like Walt Bell is absolutely just the fall guy for what is the ineptitude of the leadership that is running the football program. Tom Allen shouldn't have a job. The only person that honestly should have a job is maybe the offensive line coach, who's actually turned around the offensive line,
Bob Bostad, right?
Bob Bostad, into something decent. I've seen the defense go from who I thought were world beaters in game 1 to last game looking like I can't even. I'm not even gonna say that. Just getting absolutely beat, going from world beaters to getting absolutely beat up. By Maryland, getting punked by Tulia Tagovailoa. The program is in a depressing state right now, and I'm not sure that it's going to change this summer. I don't have the confidence in the athletics department staff that they're going to have the cojones to actually fire Tom Allen and put together a fundraising effort.
I don't think they are.
I don't think they are.
I don't think they are.
$20 million is a lot of money that they can save. And
again, this move, Matt, tells me that it's not happening this offseason. Like, it's just not. And because
I agree with you.
It's you bring in Rod Carey, and you know what? This tells me Indiana is going to let Tom Allen and Rod Carey figure this out over the next season and a half. It would have to take something absolutely shocking, if you ask me, for Indiana to dismiss Tom Allen as the head coach at the end of the season. For those of you who are listening to our podcast and wanted to hear something different, please don't leave us. I'm sure we'll have a lot more fun things to talk to you through over the course of the next half an hour or so. But if you thought this was going to be some sort of signal as it relates to Tom Allen's status, I think it only enhances it, cements it through the end of the 2024 season. Just to give you a little bit of financial detail there, according to multiple reports, Tom Allen's buyout is about $20 million at the end of this year. The buyout comes down to $7 million in December of 2024. So that's what you're looking at there. Now, some people might argue that the Big Ten TV contract and the way the league is expanding, $20 million might be absolutely nothing, especially the $13 million difference might be absolutely nothing if it means your school is playing big games in spotlight moments against high-level opposition, and you get the bowl game paycheck or maybe multiple college football playoff paychecks because the playoff is expanding. But at the end of the day, this to me gives Tom Allen that leash through the end of the 24 season. Indiana did announce in their release, Tom Allen spoke. He said he had a couple of quotes. He felt like Indiana needed a new direction on the offensive side of the ball. Tom Allen continued to say Rod brings a wealth of experience and success along with a familiarity with our personnel. I wish Walt and his family the best moving forward and thank him for his contributions to our program. It was awful to watch, Matt. It was awful to watch in College Park yesterday. It was awful to watch frequently throughout this season. It was hard to watch last year, even though Indiana found a way to snag a couple of Big Ten victories. Overall, the Walt Bell headline is just massive inconsistency, no identity, lots of confusion, lots of scrambling, not from a quarterback standpoint, scrambling from a lack of effectiveness standpoint. And you're trying to throw everything at the wall and seeing what sticks. Again, we talked about how Indiana's offense was 123rd in FBS out of 133 in yards per play and points per game. Beat Iowa, the Big Ten. So congrats,
Walt Bell. That's not a competition you should be celebrating.
For that achievement. I will say, just being in the press conferences and being in the same room as Walt Bell frequently, he conducted himself the right way. He was trying his best to make the offense work. We certainly will be looking forward to seeing what his next step is as far as football. Walt was just a new father, so it's a lot of clashing news, great news from the family perspective, tough news in football. But life in the Big Ten is a high stakes game. And as the fan put it at Tom Allen's radio show last week, it's a business. And even though you may not like NCAA sports being a business, this is it. Just there are a lot of dollars and cents in play. And whatever Indiana tried offensively struggled to work. And then when they found out a few things that worked, they wouldn't maximize those strengths. In fact, you saw even yesterday on the opening drive of the game, a couple of inside runs with Christian Turner that worked. And then you overdid it. Maryland saw it coming, stuffed it for a loss. Indiana kicked a field goal on the first drive of the game, and Maryland sort of went from there. Indiana just seemed to be overwhelmed from this hierarchy of leadership with Tom Allen, Walt Bell. We saw a lot of struggles as far as short yardage. We saw a lot of regurgitated bad play calling. We saw the option way too much. We saw interior runs with Jalen Lucas. We saw a lack of pre-snap motion, a lack of play action. It felt like defenses had a very solid understanding of what Indiana tried to do. Matt, how much is this going to help Indiana the rest of the season? My feeling is any voice would be better than Walt Bell's voice the rest of the year. How do you see it as far as the way this affects the Hoosiers from now until the end of the 23 season?
Yeah, I mean, okay, the point of a podcast is to disagree. However, Nathan and I have basically agreed on everything this podcast, and I think it's because they're the obvious answers. And yeah,
low-hanging fruit.
I mean, the low-hanging fruit is you can't get worse than one of the worst offensive coordinators in the country. And I mean, if he does, right, like let's say the offense takes a step backwards under Rod Carey, well, then we're getting our answer from the athletic department about whether they're going to fire Tom Allen or not. That is not a question. It can't get worse. If we just score 0 points from here on out in Big Ten games, look, it doesn't matter. They'll find $20 million hanging around somewhere, right? To cut out Tom Allen and get him out of town. I am not surprised, by the way, that Walt Bell was fired when he was.
We talked about it, didn't we?
We did talk about it. Yeah, you texted me. You're like, hey, keep it on the down low. I think there's a 75% chance something happens in the next couple of days. I'm at the press conference, and AD looks upset, right? And then
I mean, I'll take a second there. Yeah. So after the game yesterday, the post gamer, a lot of Indiana media traveled to College Park. Again, we know that the fans care about this program. The media is taking the time and effort to give this team a platform, win or lose. And we were all in a cramped room yesterday, a brightly lit, warm media room, intimate setting. And just a second after Tom Allen takes his seat in the press area, we see Scott Dolson walk in. So in case those of you may not have known, I mean, Scott Dolson frequently travels to a lot of the football and basketball games, as many as he can get to. He was in person yesterday at College Park, and when he walked in, he had an unhappy look on his face. Tom Allen did as well. There was a lot of frustration with the way the Akron game went, and then with the way the Maryland game went, and with the bye week coming up, it felt I didn't know, but you kind of knew. So Matt, yeah. So the overall question here is, how much do you think this really helps the offense between now and the end of the season?
I mean, it can't hurt the
Yeah,
offense.
I agree.
How much does help? I will say this: giving Taven Jackson more opportunities to learn than Walt Bell was giving. I think it's incredible how decent Taven Jackson has been through the games, even given the fact that, look, the offensive line still isn't great. It's much improved because it couldn't get worse than it was last year.
Well, and this is what happened, right? Rod Carey took over, and there was an uptick, and you beat Michigan State, and Dexter Williams looked good. Like,
yeah, I agree. There might be an uptick in the offense. Not might. I think there will be. I think it's impossible that there wouldn't. An uptick in the offense, and Tom Allen will keep his job going into next year, and there'll be some sort of bright spots that go get some decent transfers in the transfer portal, because they have playing time in the Power 5 conference. And again, next year's going to be, kind of mid, and then the Tom Allen will get the axe. But the offense will improve. I think it's what I was trying to say on my point was, when I was talking about Taven Jackson, is I think the quarterbacks especially will benefit from this change, right? Because again, they'll have the ball in their hands more, throwing it and not running it. If I see another speed option play, I'm going to lose my mind. All right, it hasn't worked. And I will see what Rod Carey brings as far as play calling goes. I don't really got any information on tendencies, or if he's going to change the system at all, or how that's going to work, which I think is a good news for IU, right? Because then it's going to be harder for defenses to game plan playing Indiana, especially next game. But as they're going to have to work with things on the fly. They're going to have to be tuning some stuff. There's going to be some stuff mixed in the offense throughout the season as things continue. So we'll really see what this offense becomes in maybe the last couple games, as long as people stay healthy, knock on wood. What they're trying to do with the offense, and then we can project more going into next year. There's still some winnable games left on schedule. We all thought that we were going to lose to Maryland, to be honest.
We both predicted a loss. Yep.
We both predicted a loss. I predicted that the team would go 3-9 this year. Before the season, it's still looking likely the team will go 3-9 this year. So everything is still on track to meet expectations, which were already extremely low. But again, it's the way in which the games have gone, the optics that have really determined how fast things have changed, right? If the Kent State game had been, or the Akron game had been Akron, I keep saying Kent State. If the Akron game had been, a 30-point win, right? And then you come and play Maryland, would Walt Bell have been fired?
I don't think so.
Probably not.
I don't think so. No.
Again, we would have gone Power 5 opponent, Walt Bell, like, what is he doing? That's probably what we've been talking about right now. And thinking he should have been fired, but he would not have been fired given that performance.
I agree. You had a decent game against Indiana State, and then it really just bottomed out after that.
Yeah. And again, I don't have any information on this, but I think the interesting piece that you shared about Walt Bell becoming a new father and then also getting fired lends me to believe that was actually part of Tom Allen's decision making.
Maybe
could have been in the process of doing this, because again, we know Tom Allen is extremely loyal to a fault to these guys, which I respect. And again, a lot of things Tom Allen does, I respect the heck out of, and he's a wonderful human being. I would not be surprised if he didn't take to I'm the father guy, and he loves his kids so much. If he didn't go, it's his first child, he should be with his kid here, instead of trying to reclaim something that he's going to get fired at the end of the season anyways. Right. Why don't we just buy you out here? We put my friend in charge of the offense, and you can go be with your kid. That would not surprise me in the slightest, which honestly, I don't know if I don't like that or I like that.
I
Like
like it. Look, whatever.
I
I mean,
respect it, but at the same time, if you were going to fire him at the end of the year anyways because of his performance, then why was he even here for this
I
season in
mean,
the first place? Like, there's so
I
many
do, yeah,
different
and
things to think about.
well, I think part of that is Indiana totally overhauled their offense during the preseason and
Yeah.
during spring football into training camp. Whatever they ran last year was different than what they ran this year. Last year was pocket passing. It was spread the field out, let Connor Bazelak find guys. Middle of the season, you fire Darren Hiller, you bring on Rod Carey, Dexter Williams takes over. Even though he was in the house, he looked like the best quarterback all season. Had a big rushing game at the end of the Ohio State game, was awesome against Michigan State, scored a touchdown, throwing that option pitch to Jalen Lucas against Purdue, then got hurt. So then spring football, training camp, you revise your offense, you revamp your offense, you bring in Taven Jackson and Brendan Sorsby, have them compete. Indiana ran a different offense in week 1 than they ran in week 2 and 3. And I don't know what they ran yesterday. So in general, you were looking at a play caller that didn't really establish what he wanted to see out of an offense. And look, I see what you're saying as far as the family matter. Tom Allen quoted the family in the press release today saying, hey, I wish Walt and his family the best moving forward. Like, I think it was on top of Tom Allen's mind. I'm sure Walt Bell was dealing with a lot of life stress as far as, the things leading up to the week-to-week preparation for this team. It was especially telling when Indiana this year, I mean, it was different last year to some degree. This year, IU started off games horribly. It's one thing to be bad. It's another thing to dig yourself a 3-touchdown hole before the blink of an eye. And I understand, like, it takes both sides of the ball to make that happen. But it was really, really hard to watch at times this year at the start of the game. And then they figured things out as they went. That's just not good enough. Rod Carey takes over. He was the head coach at Northern Illinois, play caller at Northern Illinois, Temple's head coach as well from 2019 to 2021 before joining the team in an advisory role at the start of 2022. His system, his play calling tendencies are kind of all over the place. In 2011 and 2012 at Northern Illinois as the offensive coordinator, he had a quarterback named Chandler Harnish who was a dual threat. He threw for a bunch of yards, he ran for a bunch of yards. You saw both sides of the situation there from his quarterback at Northern Illinois. At Temple, he had Anthony Russo and DeJuan Mathis. Quarterbacks were assigned to throw the football, not much running. So when Carey was the head coach at Temple, they had Mike Uranovich as the offensive coordinator. Uranovich is now the head coach at Butler. But with that said, you looked at a situation where the quarterback was told to distribute the football, get it to your receivers, figure out things from there. Short yardage is what I'm going to be paying attention to, Matt. Even yesterday, you saw Indiana call timeout before a 4th and 1, bring Taven Jackson of the offense back on the field late in the second quarter, game somewhat still within reach, and they lost 11 yards on a triple option play. What do you want to see more of the rest of the season from Rod Carey, and what do you want to see less of, especially from the first few games this year?
No more option. Take the option out. Taven Jackson is not an option QB. Like, what are we doing here?
What if Dexter Williams comes back?
Dexter Williams comes back. He's an option QB.
Sure. All
Run
right.
the option.
All right.
KYP. Play to your personnel. Like,
know your personnel.
Yeah. Know your personnel. Play to your personnel. Like, what are we doing here? Yeah. Let Taven cook. Throw it more. I want to see more Jalen Lucas in the slot. Because I think he has a future as a receiver, not as a running back. And honestly, if anything, I want to see some of the younger guys play. Like, I need to see some of the actual recruits that
Donovan McCulley,
Omar Cooper,
Bradley
Archer. Like, these guys need to get more touches because they came in to get better with Indiana and not get better because they get to play more at Indiana, right? Like, they came here to actually play So let's let them play, because the future of the program relies on Indiana being able to sell people that they can come to IU, get better, and actually play over transfers, right? So as much as I love Indiana transfers as well, and I would love us to win football games, sometimes you're just not going to win football games, and you could, in fact, give people some very valuable experience instead. So let's do that.
There you go. And that includes offensive linemen like Carter Sales, Khalil Benson, guys that are in-house and they're trying to improve. I'm sure you're never going to take guys like Cam Camper or Zach Carpenter off the field. They're especially important. They've been featured all year. They're
Cam
obviously
Camper should get the ball more.
When they're on, you took the words right out of my mouth. That's what I was going to say. Distribute the ball to your best playmakers in situations where they're comfortable. I want to see 10 to 12 downfield shots to Cam Camper every single game. And I don't care if it's snowing. I don't care if it's sunny. I don't care if it's daytime. I don't care if it's night. Find a way to get Cam Camper the football. I love your thought about Jalen Lucas out of the slot. Let him get the football in space and go. And what I don't want to see is us running Jalen Lucas between the tackles, throwing awkward pop passes to Jalen Lucas where he's running laterally and there are 3 or 4 defenders in the backfield as soon as he touches the football. Get it out to him in the slot, in space. I love seeing Jalen Lucas run routes out of the backfield. I want to see him run downfield routes. The best offensive play Indiana had this year was Taven Jackson's touchdown pass to Jalen Lucas against Louisville, where Lucas was in the slot, ran an angle route, straight down the field, 30 yards. Jackson hit him with a rope. It was an absolute beauty. They isolated the linebacker on Jalen Lucas one-on-one, and it was a perfect play. And you see moments like this all year where Indiana shows it could be a downfield strike to Bradley Archer. It could be Cam Camper putting a corner on a poster. Cam Camper's touchdown against Akron. He just mossed a guy and it helped Indiana avoid egg on its face against the Zips in week 3. You saw a couple of nice plays from Jackson in the Indiana State game. Beautiful throws to Omar Cooper and to Camper in that one too. And even yesterday, if Brendan Sorsby has to play, get him a little mobile, get him a little bit on a rollout outside of the pocket, hit Donovan McCulley. If Anderson Kobe's got to play, get him in the game. Find him in downfield situations. It's all about putting your people in the right spots to succeed. And the last thing I want to see is QB sneak the football every time there's a yard to go. And if the defense knows it's coming, I do not care. I simply do not care. If there's 1 yard left, get up to the line. I don't care if you want to snap it in 10 seconds or 38 seconds. Get up to the line, snap the football, sneak it a yard. I don't care if it's Jackson, Sorsby, McCulley, Dexter Williams, if he's able to return this year. Sneak it. 1 yard. And if someone stops it, they stop it. But if you don't get the 1 yard, at least the offense doesn't get extra field position because he lost yardage. So go out there, get the football, sneak it, and everyone lives happily ever after. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing out of this between now and the end of the year. We're going to talk more about Walt Bell's dismissal as well as Rod Carey's arrival to Indiana's offensive coordinating position here in just a moment. But first, let's take a quick break for who won the week this past week in IU sports. Then there are a lot of candidates as usual with this program. How about the women's soccer team? With another Big Ten draw, they continue to have a good season, stay up. They came into the week in the top 25, tough road loss to Ohio State, secured a draw today in Big Ten play. They keep moving on. I saw Nick Westbrook-Akina score a huge touchdown today for Tennessee, have a great game there as the Titans secured a home victory against a floundering Bengals team. I saw Raheem Lane get some snaps for the Chargers this afternoon as he's trying to make a bigger and brighter impression on a Chargers defense that could certainly use an uptick in execution. So if Lane can give them that would be wonderful. But we have to tip our cap to the IU volleyball program, who had an unbelievable atmosphere on Saturday night at home on Big Ten Network against number 2 Nebraska. The Hoosiers did drop the match in 4 sets. However, on Friday night, they beat Iowa at home to record a Big Ten win. And so you are really seeing progress here under Coach Steve Aird. The volleyball program had a sellout crowd of about 2,600 people at Wilkinson Hall. I like to mention on this podcast frequently other sporting experiences in Indiana outside of football and men's basketball. If you haven't gone to women's basketball yet, a game yet, a soccer match yet at Armstrong Stadium, at a volleyball game at Wilkinson Hall, make sure you try to make that happen. They're all beautiful facilities and excellent environments. Try to make it out if you haven't already. If you'd like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search for the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our information by following us on Twitter at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound. This part is important, folks. If you enjoy our show, leave us a review. Tell a friend. Share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. We're not going anywhere. We'll be here through the end of football season, men's basketball, women's basketball, March Madness, transfer portal life. It just keeps going nonstop here on the Hoosier Sound. The big news, folks, earlier on Sunday, Indiana announced they're relieving Walt Bell of his duties as Indiana's play caller. He is moving on from the Indiana program. Rod Carey, former head coach at Northern Illinois, former Indiana Hoosier offensive lineman for 4 years. He takes over as this program's play caller after his time as the school's offensive line coach at the end of last year after Darren Hiller was dismissed. Matt, I think all in all, the entire offense is going to get upgraded. It's going to help this team score touchdowns instead of field goals, score field goals instead of turning the ball over. But if you look at all the different positions on the football field on this offense between now and the end of the year, which position or position group do you think will benefit the most from having Rod Carey call the plays instead of Walt Bell?
So I said QBs earlier. And I'll stick by that answer. I'll give you a second answer for that, and that'll be wide receivers because they're going to throw the ball more. So there you go.
Here you go. You definitely look forward to seeing that. I can't help but think this will also help the offensive line to a good degree. Of course, Carey has that experience as an offensive lineman within the Indiana football program, and then he was an offensive line coach at Northern Illinois. That's really his bread and butter. You saw, of course, Carey take over as the offensive line coach at the end of the 2022 season. So now you've got Bob Bostad, you've got Rod Carey. I'm looking forward to Taven Jackson having some clean pockets, having some reliable 2 to 3 seconds to throw the football. And it happens, I think, as early as the Michigan game in about a couple of weeks. And then, of course, as Matt mentioned, your schedule does ease up. You've got a few games coming up after Michigan where you say, okay, maybe, just maybe, Indiana can string some wins together. You get home against Rutgers, and Rutgers, I think, will be favored in that game, but Indiana will go into this home game against Scarlet Knights, homecoming day, and you want to think that the Hoosiers have a shot. After a tough road game at Penn State, the Hoosiers return home to play a shaky Wisconsin team, and then road Illinois, home Michigan State, at Purdue. I think a lot of folks will say if Indiana can beat Rutgers at home, those last 3 games are winnable, especially those last 3 games. So even if you're sitting at 3-6 through 9 games, that opportunity of a bowl game could still be in the mix. It's a lot to digest here, Matt, but the biggest, most important thing here is that Indiana has got to keep committing, buying into this coaching staff, buying into this program, because there could be payoff here before the end of the season.
Yeah, we're not beating Rutgers. Rutgers is actually good. And IU's not. And unless Rod Carey is the second coming,
that doesn't always guarantee
of Matt
result,
LaFleur.
It's not a guarantee. It doesn't matter who's the favorite, who's the underdog coming into a game, right?
Okay, that's fair. However, I've seen Indiana unable to stop option QBs for the last 7 years, and Wimsatt at Rutgers is one of the better running QBs I think Indiana has seen in the last decent amount of time. So he's going to be an absolute terror against that defense. And then we'll see what the offense can do. But I think Rutgers look really solid.
Sure.
We'll see. I think the best game of the year for Indiana to win, best chance of winning a game, would be the Michigan State game. I think Indiana, Michigan State, I think they're both terrible teams. So it's a battle of just It's a battle of a coachless team and a team that wants to be coachless.
You are trying to get this podcast in trouble. All I'm saying is the Hoosiers here needed to make a change, and it's for the better that even though it is 5 weeks, crazy as that sounds, it's only been 17 games. Indiana has this. Tom Allen decided that Walt Bell was no longer the right fit for the play caller spot. Again, Indiana was 123rd in the country, 13th in the Big Ten as it relates to yards per play and points per game. At a program where scoring points really hasn't been all that difficult of an exercise. Even dating, it's not even just the Antoine Randall L days, but it was under Bill Lynch and Ben Chappell, under Kevin Wilson and Nate Sudfeld and Cam Kaufman and Trey Roberson. And then you, of course, saw the early years of Tom Allen with Richard Lago going into Peyton Ramsey and Michael Penix. Indiana was able to score more points than they were here in the last year and a half, and that's why the decision was made there. Matt, of course, yesterday Indiana lost 44-17 to Maryland. Cam Camper, surprisingly, didn't play. Didn't see that coming. You also had, the Hoosiers getting crushed right off the bat. The first play from scrimmage, a bomb to Jay Sean Jones from Talia. Talia ended up scoring 6 total touchdowns, 5 through the air. Ty Felton caught 3 of them. Outside of the play caller stuff, what exactly happened there on Saturday afternoon, and what other immediate observations do you have from Indiana's massive underperformance against the Terps?
I'm not going to lie to you, and I'm very glad I did this. I didn't watch the game live. I watched the game on tape. I recorded it and I watched it. I sped through commercials. I would kind of skip through the Maryland offensive possessions because I already knew what would happen. And just kind of, basically gave myself a skinny note to the game. So again, I wasn't like you. I wasn't actually in person watching the game. Which, yeah, I'm not jealous that I wasn't you at this point in time. I will
Except
say
the ending. The most interesting part was stuff after the game, if you ask
me.
Me.
Yeah, that would have been fun to be a part of, like to witness the whole debacle that was the end of that game. But no. I am not envious that you had to sit through 4 quarters of that football. But yeah, my overall just thoughts on that game. Offense just really bad. Like Division 2, Division 3. It's hard to put into words. I was going to say, I think there's a majority of FCS schools could have done a better performance on the field than the Indiana offense.
Well, I mean,
did.
Virginia and Charlotte did. They're FBS, but they're at the very, very bottom of FBS. They were better offensively than Indiana was.
Yeah. I will say this: Maryland's offense is they play in the Big Ten East. I think they might have a better offense than Ohio State. Ohio State's defense is kind of what's been carrying them. They might be the second best offense in the Big Ten in general. I was very impressed about what they did on offense, and I know that I just tore Matt Guerrieri a new one by saying the defense has regressed, but I think it only regressed because they've been playing people that actually know how to play and call plays and are dynamic. And Maryland is a very dynamic offense.
Maryland,
Louisville, which they looked good against Louisville, and again, Louisville's undefeated, right? So, we got to take things, I guess, in a more macro perspective and less micro. When it comes for the rest of the season. But I think that Maryland is probably, again, the second best offense. Indiana, we'll see. I think Michigan's probably going to be the best one. And then we've already played Ohio State. Penn State's right up there. but they kind of took the ball out of Drew Allar's
I don't
hands.
think Penn State's offense is as good as Maryland's or
No, I don't think so
Louisville's
either.
or Michigan's.
No, it's so dynamic. Maryland's offense is so dynamic. And that offense POs me. And you know why it does? Because there's no reason Maryland has historically has been just as terrible as Indiana football has been. Like that neither program has been good almost ever. Mm-hmm. And now we're sitting here and I am envious of something that Maryland has. It's you look around.
The shoe was on the other foot 3 years ago, Matt.
Exactly. She was on the other foot 3 years ago. They made changes, and those changes have brought good things to College Park. Indiana was, on the doorstep, knocking on the door of actually becoming a decent football program, made a bunch of decisions that were not so good, and now is back looking up at Maryland, which should never be a thing, by the way. And again, I am not surprised that we are in this position. And the performance on Saturday sucked. But it's hard to be a Hoosier fan and get excited about this team when that's the product you see on the field. And then you go and look at other basketball schools. And Duke's in a brawl and a absolute dogfight with Notre Dame Saturday night. Kansas, they got beat by a very, very good Texas team, but
they're having a great season though,
and they're having a fantastic season, and they're probably going to. I wouldn't be surprised if Kansas ends up in the New York Six Bowl, right? That would not surprise me in the slightest. And you look at Louisville's 4-0.
Louisville,
Kentucky just took it to Florida. They took Florida out behind the woodshed.
I'd consider Maryland a basketball school, and they're having a great season.
Yeah, so basketball schools across the country are having a great season outside of UCLA and IU, and UCLA is playing
Virginia.
We're gonna put Virginia there. We're gonna put Virginia.
I think so.
Okay, fine. Virginia, fine. Virginia, UCLA, and IU are not having a great season, and it sucks. Michigan State too. Michigan State's a basketball school now.
Yeah, it's true, and this is the thing. I agree completely with your sentiment that Group of 5 FBS schools, FCS schools would have had a better offensive and defensive game plan. I just can't get over the fact that the Hoosiers start so poorly in every single one of these games. I think that falls on the feet of the head coach because it's not just one side of the ball. I mean, you could say Ohio State, the defense was off to a great start there, but all in all, that falls on the head coach's feet. You just cannot be that poor from a preparation standpoint, from an execution standpoint. And I mentioned on this podcast last week, for those of you who want to have a sharp eye on football, the start of the game tells you a lot about how coaches prepare, about what coaches emphasized during the week, what they practiced, what they anticipated out of the opponent. And against Ohio State, Indiana's offense didn't I don't know what they tried to do there against Louisville. The defense continually leaked massive plays to the one home run hitter on Louisville's offense in Jamari Sharp. That's the type of stuff we're worried about here, and it continued against Maryland on Saturday afternoon after DJ Irons went crazy with his legs in Memorial Stadium in week 4. You saw Indiana have very little answer from Maryland's passing attack in the first 10 minutes of the game. Yeah, you had a couple of short fields there, but the passing was all over the Indiana secondary. And what's frustrating is that they found their sea legs. They found their sea legs in the middle of the game, and they got to their assignments faster, and they matched up against Maryland better, and they, of course, shut down the Terrapins running game. And it's just, it can't take an hour and a half before that happens. That was a very noticeable takeaway from the Maryland game. It's just another awful, slow start to the Hoosiers on a Saturday afternoon. And then I look at the offense, Matt, and I still see really, really talented players. I am continually a believer in Taven Jackson. I saw someone who, continued to get better at making quick decisions. He was wound up early, first Big Ten road game. I can understand that. little bit of an overexcitement at the start, but you saw him settle down, and I love the way he throws left, center, right side of the field, short, intermediate, and deeper distances on his throws. He mixes it up. He keeps defenses off balance. Uh, this is a quarterback that I think can be really, really good. But what I'm looking for between now and the end of the year is a significant step up in his development. I want to see Taven Jackson throw for 300 yards in a game. I want to see him throw for multiple touchdowns in a game, especially when you start facing some weaker defenses here. I'm looking especially at Michigan State, at Illinois, at Purdue. I'm not crediting Michigan State for limiting Iowa yesterday. So that's what I'm paying attention to between now and the rest of the season. As I mentioned, Scott Dolson was there. He was not happy. Indiana fans traveled. There were a lot of Hoosiers in the crowd yesterday. Of course, if you live in the DC area, the East Coast, it's a nice venue to visit. It was nice weather outside as well. A lot of Hoosier fans traveled, and they simply just did not get the result they were looking for, as Indiana fell 44-17. Now the Hoosiers have a bye week before taking on Michigan, potentially a number 1 Michigan, but likely a number 2 Michigan in about a week and a little bit, almost a couple of weeks there in Ann Arbor. Quickly, our social media shout out. We're just going to shout out our channels here. If you haven't liked our stuff, retweeted our stuff, subscribed to our stuff, you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube at Indiana HQ, as well as at the Hoosier Sound. Matt, on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
And you can find us there. Join the masses. We have a lot for you there over on social media. Join us if you have not already. By the way, Matt, we asked a lot of folks over on our weekly podcast poll at the Hoosier Sound, as the dismissal of Walt Bell took place, which position or position group do you think will benefit the most from the offensive coordinator change? 50% of you agreed with Matt's initial answer of the quarterback. 22% tipped their cap to wide receivers and tight ends. 17% said running backs. 11% said offensive line. Couple of comments, though. Colt Hoosier is asking, is there any reason to believe this will improve anything? We addressed that. Matt and I both feel like, yes, there will be improvement. It's hard to get worse. What exactly is the ceiling? We both believe it's limited, but hey, we'd love to be surprised. Y Sarge says, yeah, none of the position groups. He can't magically fix Jackson's accuracy, scratch the QBs and the receivers and the tight ends. Your O-line is what it is at this point in the year. So Y Sarge not feeling too great. You said your mental health will take a step forward. I think that is an accurate assessment. But how about this Twitter account here at Hoosier Reb 01, who says all of the above? And you know what? PHAGANBR 549 says the same thing as well. So Hoosier fans all over the place. They're not sure what to expect. Indiana, though, moved on from Walt Bell, bringing in Rod Carey here, and we're looking forward to seeing this offense in a couple of weeks against the Michigan Wolverines. Matt, though, the Big Ten schedule does not stop. We're going to give you a look ahead to the Big Ten slate here. Games don't start for another 5 days. But Matt and I want you to just keep the hype level going. Why turn it off during the week? It doesn't matter if you have school or work. Big Ten football doesn't quit. And there are 6 conference games, 6 games involving conference teams, 5 Big Ten matchups coming up this weekend, starting Friday night with Nebraska, Illinois, wrapping up Saturday night with Michigan, Minnesota. We have point spreads and over-unders for all for the Big Ten games. Here on our Big Ten picks of the week, we like to make some predictions against the spread, some over-unders, maybe throw in an upset special. Matt, as you look at the slate this week, what do you like as far as a spread pick or an upset pick across the Big Ten?
No shot. Ohio State is covering 19 against Maryland. There is no shot. In fact, Maryland could be a cheeky upset pick if you wanted to go in that direction. However, I think Ohio State will still win that game. I believe it's in Ohio State as well. Yeah. Lucky Ducks. Lucky Ducks. They'll probably win that game, but it'll be closer than a lot of people expect, or especially what Vegas expects.
I think sorry, keep going.
Last thing, upset pick of the week. Rutgers goes into Wisconsin and beats Wisconsin because the West sucks. The West is so bad. The West is terrible, 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 terrible. So give me Maryland to cover and Rutgers to win. Shout out the Big Ten East.
Shout out Big Ten East. I think you can make a fair upset case for everyone except the Gophers this week. And that includes Howard out of the FCS. If those lines come up against Northwestern, I think you can make a case for an upset in all these games. I could see Nebraska winning in Champaign, the Terps winning in Columbus, Rutgers in Madison, Purdue in Iowa City. The favorite I'm very comfortable in is Michigan covering 19.5 against the Gophers. I don't care that game is in Minneapolis, but 19.5 for Michigan against Minnesota to me is not nearly enough for the Wolverines in that game, assuming normal health for the Wolverines. I love that one quite a bit. And again, I think all of these other ones are potential upsets. I guess if I really have to put my name to one of these, I like Nebraska winning in Illinois quite a bit. Illinois was really underwhelming this past week. I think Matt Rule was a little bit overwhelmed by the Wolverines in Lincoln on Saturday. I don't blame him. I think this Husker squad will go out there. I'm sure most of Memorial Stadium in Champaign will be filled by fans from the other Memorial Stadium in Lincoln who travel to Illinois to watch this one. So I'm looking forward to the team from Lincoln beating the team from the land of Lincoln on Friday night at 8:00 as the Illini are a 4-point favorite. I think the Huskers win that one straight up. So, Matt, lots to discuss there. There was a lot of action yesterday across the Big Ten. Of course, Walt Bell fired as Indiana's offensive coordinator. What are your closing thoughts here as we wind up on this Sunday night?
Closing thoughts are the obvious happened that needed to happen. I will still not be happy until we are in a new coaching search. You look around at what Michigan State is looking at for as far as the coaching market goes. And I begin to wonder why Indiana can't compete with them for those coaches, especially given the fact that the athletic department makes as much money as it does. Why we don't invest more money into the football program? It would, seem to be a smart investment for the future of the athletic department, but
so that we don't get stranded like Oregon State and Washington State. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Precisely, yes. And so again, we'll see. We'll see what happens with the football program from here on out. It'll be a nice breath of fresh air to have somebody else calling plays, given the fact that the play calling has sucked for the last 2.5 years now. Maybe even 3.5 if you want, or 2.5 years. Yeah.
Look, there's just so much to discuss here, but one thing that stood out to me is that if you take Iowa out of the argument here, but we'll even throw them in for what it's worth. The teams that won games yesterday in the Big Ten put up a ton of points on the board. Okay, Minnesota scored 35. Penn State scored 41. Maryland scored 44. Rutgers scored 52. Michigan scored 45. Purdue scored 44. The Hawkeyes 26. But you know what? We'll just do 26. Nice, good work. Thumbs up, Ferentz family.
They scored more than 25.
You gotta score. I don't care what the Big Ten tradition is. I don't care what the weather is like. None of that matters. You have got to put 30 up every week.
That doesn't matter anymore. The weather,
none of that matters. And Indiana's done that before. They did it under Kalen DeBoer. They did it under Kevin Wilson. They did it in the Bill Lynch era. You can put up points and have successful offenses at Indiana University. Let's make that happen. Starting in a week and a half, and if Michigan beats you 60-30, fine. That happened a few years ago in Ann Arbor. Cody Latimer caught an opening drive touchdown in Michigan Stadium. Nate Sudfeld hit him. Indiana and Trey Roberson and Nate Sudfeld and Cody Latimer lost like 63-48. But you know what? Like Devin Gardner, shout out. You were fine. Jeremy Gallon went crazy. It was a fun 3.5 hours. Indiana was within arm's reach the whole way. Score points, see what happens. That has worked at Indiana. Keep that going now, whether it's Rod Carey or anyone else here in the years to come, especially as the Big Ten expands. But folks, that about wraps it up for our 309th show of the Hoosier Sound, a special Sunday night episode. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. You hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today. Be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ and at the Hoosier Sound to make sure you don't miss any in the future. You can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love. Go Hoosiers. Dope. What?